It goes without saying that The Last of Us Part II is one of the most controversial video games of all time. It's been on my mind again recently due to the remastered version coming out on PS5. I've gone back and forth so many times in my head about this game and its story. Finally, I think I've come to my conclusion. The Last of Us Part II is backwards. Part 2's story is actually pretty simple at its core. It's a story about revenge. As you will see throughout this video, what Naughty Dog set out to do was extremely risky. Making the story work in the eyes of the fans was always going to be a difficult task. And this task was made even more difficult by a few outside factors. Firstly, this game was hit with a ton of major leaks before release. The biggest leak basically spoiled the entire story, including the most pivotal plot point, which was that Joel is going to be killed by Abby. This meant Abby's character was extremely hated before the game had even been released, and that was absolutely devastating for the game and the way people perceived it. I also feel I have to acknowledge that a lot of the discourse surrounding The Last of Us Part 2 comes from bad faith. For whatever reason, the most hateful people on the internet gathered to tear this game down, using homophobic and transphobic rhetoric to do so. It's for that reason that the discussion of this game became so toxic and unreasonable. If you said you liked the game, you would be attacked by these hateful groups. At the same time, if you tried to genuinely criticize the game, people would think you were siding with those vile haters. It caused a scenario where nobody could have an honest discussion about the game. I hope with the 4 years that have gone by, we can now have a more open discussion about the positives and the negatives. That's exactly what I will aim to do throughout this video. It always irks me to see people call The Last of Us Part 2 a bad game. That statement is just so ridiculous to me. We live in a world with the Gollum game and you're gonna call this bad. Let's be real, most of the time when people say Part 2 is a bad game, what they really mean is that they don't like the story. And in many ways, I would be right there with them. I think the story has a lot of flaws, with the primary message failing to hit due to the order of events in the story. The very general and quick summary of Part 2's story is that Abby kills Joel and Ellie wants revenge. But throughout the course of trying to get this revenge, Ellie realizes that revenge helps no one. It just leads to a never-ending cycle of more pain and more death. In many ways, it's a commendable story. It's a story that goes against what we expect from video games, which can often boil down to shooting everyone in sight without thinking twice. But there's one crucial issue here. In order for that storyline to work, the player needs to like Abby, or at the very least, tolerate her. But that's pretty difficult to do after the player watches her smash Joel's head in with a golf club. Why not spend more time fleshing out Abby as a character first? Make us like her and trust her before she kills Joel. That's why I say Part 2 is backwards. Imagine a scenario where the player spends 5 to 10 hours with Abby before she kills Joel. This could be done in many different ways, but the easy example I'll give is to have Abby interact with Joel and Ellie more before the killing. Let's say Abby finds Joel and Ellie and they work together for an extended period of time. Through this, Abby infiltrates their town and gains their trust while hiding her true intention. Ideally, the player would also begin to trust her and like her. One way they could achieve this is by giving Abby a big heroic moment. I'm just spitballing here, but maybe Joel is about to be killed by someone else, but Abby saves him, and Abby would save him because she wants to be the one to kill him and get her revenge. But in the eyes of Joel and Ellie, as well as the player, it's the ultimate sign of trust. This would help alleviate another common criticism of the story, which is that Joel's death is just kind of out of character for him. And in my opinion, Joel's death scene is just a total mess in general. Joel and Tommy meet this giant group of random people that they don't know and immediately trust them. They walk into a closed off room where they are completely outnumbered and don't seem even a little bit concerned. These are two individuals who have been surviving in an apocalyptic world for over 20 years. They would never be that stupid. Another part of this scene that bothers me is that it just feels so rushed. To me, it feels like the type of scene you would expect for the death of a side character, not the main playable character of the previous game. I think that's why a lot of people often say Part 2 was disrespectful to Joel's character. Giving him more time in the game and building up more of a relationship between him and Abby prior to the killing could have helped avoid this fan backlash. Like I said, I'm just trying to paint a basic scenario here, and I hope you get what I'm going for. To put it simply, make the player like Abby before she kills Joel instead of the other way around. If the player had built a level of trust and love for Abby before she kills Joel, it would have been such a major shock, and for some, they may even think twice about wanting revenge on Abby due to these prior experiences. But instead, the story has Abby kill Joel and then tries to make you like her. Because of this, everything they try to do to make Abby look better just doesn't really work. By the time we learn that Abby's father was one of the doctors killed by Joel, the player has already developed such a deep hatred for her that it's almost impossible to even care. The section of the game where Abby helps Lev and Yara is supposed to make us like her, but that also also comes too late, and it just ends up feeling like a long distraction from the main storyline. And the moment where Abby spares Dina because she's pregnant is meant to humanize Abby and show that she has some empathy, but it really doesn't make up for everything she's already done. I think another positive to having the story play out backwards is that it would have allowed the players to have more time with Joel before his death. I think the fact that Joel died so early in the game is a big reason why many players just couldn't accept his death. Joel had become one of the most beloved gaming characters of all time after the first game. Players waited 7 years to see him again, and within the first 2 hours of the game, he's gone. I understand that there were flashback sequences with Joel, but still, it's not the same. I think we can all agree that Joel kinda had to die in part 2 for what he did at the end of the first game. We all understand why Joel did what he did, and we can debate whether it was right to do so. But what we can't debate is that someone killing doctors who are trying to find a cure is probably gonna piss off a whole lot of people, and those people are gonna want revenge. So yeah, Joel's death made perfect sense, but I think having it come later would have lessened the blow for the players, while also giving them a chance to bond with Abby more. At the end of the game, Ellie gets her chance at revenge on Abby, but she comes to the conclusion that it won't fix anything and instead tries to forgive. So because of this, she doesn't kill Abby and lets her go. The problem is this ending only works if the player agrees with Naughty Dog's message that revenge isn't worth it. With this ending, the writers essentially force you to sympathize with Abby. If the player can't sympathize with her or just doesn't want to, then the entire story immediately falls apart. And unfortunately, I don't feel the writers did a good enough job building Abby's character for this ending to work. I think that, combined with the timeline of events in the story, is why so many are left with a disdain for the story in this game. And that is why I use the word backwards. I think part 2's storyline is fine, but it should have been reversed, with Joel's death coming later and the buildup of Abby's character and backstory coming earlier. If that had been done, it would have given fans more time with Joel before his death and also allowed them to build a better connection with Abby. In this scenario, I think the story would have resonated a lot better for most players. At the end of the day though, I think part 2's story is great for the simple fact that I'm still thinking about it 4 years later. There's not many other games or stories that I can think of that have had such a lingering effect on me, so I have to give part 2 major credit for that, but I do still stand by my critiques. What do you think about my idea of reversing part 2's story? Do you think that could have helped the fan reception of the game? Let me know in the comments below.